Hey guys, this is Brad Furch with My Easy Monogram. I'm here today with Michelle. Michelle joined us in September of 2022 and explosively came onto the scene. It's not too often that we have a merchant that comes in with 10, 15 sales a day in their first week. So she definitely got on my radar. She and I connected. She actually ended up being our top seller in 2022 and has continued to be our top seller in 2023. So just wanted to bring her on today, do a case study, and get to know you a little bit. So,
well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So what got you into e-commerce in the first place? What time did you start, and what made you think that e-commerce was a good fit for you?
So I used to be a property manager for years, and then got into real estate. I was a realtor, and I ended up starting my own candle business, actually. My daughter and I were making candles, and I was just trying to figure out how to effectively market the candles online. And in doing that, I had done some research and came across an e-commerce course that I took online. Okay. And the course was teaching how to do print-on-demand, drop shipping type products. And so when I initially took the course, I just figured I should be following the course exactly what they're doing so that I could make sure that I had a baseline and that I was doing it correctly, and then I would apply it to the candles. But in doing that, I fell in love with e-commerce, print-on-demand products. I was testing a lot of different things at the time, and metal art was one of the things that I started testing, and I started having really good success with metal art. So
what all were you testing at the same time that you did the metal art?
Mostly,
or I guess what was the progression of products that you tested before you got to metal art?
So I had tested different like T-shirts, hoodies, blankets, mugs, jewelry with custom messages, things like that. And I was just testing all different kinds of things at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I was getting...
How many different products would you say? Like not just like, so if you had mugs, but you had 20 mugs, so that's 20, and 50 jewelry, and what was the total product range?
Honestly, I don't know, because I was taking a lot of the designs that I was creating and applying those to multiple different products, and also, testing different upsells to have multiple different products for the orders. So I honestly don't know the exact number of products.
Tens, hundreds, thousands?
Oh, hundreds, thousands. Yeah. Okay. Lots and lots of different products.
How much time do you think went into, like from the start of your journey, going through all these trials, in this setting? It can sound like it happened over the course of a week or two.
Oh, no. It was months and a lot of long days and nights. Like, this is pretty much all I did for a while, because in the beginning, it was just trying to figure out how to do it, research. And then when I, then I had to start creating ads and just trying to figure out products. Yeah. So it started with the design for the products, and then the design for the creatives or the ads that I was running, and just trying to see what was working. So it was a combination of things, trying to find the right product and trying to find the right ads and then the right customer.
What was the first product that made you think that you were on the right path outside of candles? Because my understanding is you had some relatively good success with your candles, but you kind of moved away from that because the burden of having to do all that work yourself.
It wasn't
making the candles
really scalable. For the way, I would have had to hire a manufacturer and then go through that whole process, and that takes a lot of capital to do that. And it wasn't scalable with me and my daughter running it on our own. Even locally, it was a lot, but to be able to scale online, it would have been a much bigger undertaking and like I said, a lot more capital to really get that going, to be where I could be with print on demand. overnight,
Yeah.
essentially. I mean, obviously that's an exaggeration, but all of that back work to get that company to where it would have been scalable would have been it would have taken me a lot longer and cost me a lot more money.
Well, it's funny that you say that because that's the same struggle I went through in 2016, 2017. I was doing metal art back in 2016, 2017, and we went from doing $50,000 over the course of, I'd say, 7 months to doing $1 million in 10 days. And then the following year was about $14-15 million. And with that came, these lasers, $450,000 per laser. I need like 5 or 6 of them. We needed a 50,000 square foot facility, 65 employees. It was total capital investment for me in that 15, 16 month period was around, I would say, probably $4 million. And that was the biggest challenge. We didn't have a problem getting sales in the door. We had a problem with scaling the operation side of things. And so, I realized when I left that company that anybody else that wants to get into this industry would have the same issues. So if I just did the fulfillment of it, created a POD service where people could do the metal art, people can scale their sales of the metal art, and I've already done the scaling of the operations. So definitely understand why you didn't want to do that, because it is a very aging process. I feel much older after that 1.5 years of doing it. So when you started selling and you moved away from your candles, what was the first product that actually took off for you? And when I say took off, I mean something that gave you that internal belief that you were on to something to provide for your family, to pay your mortgage.
It was metal art. I had several sales for other products, but it wasn't scalable. The
And
first product, because the AOV, I wasn't profitable based on, the cost of the product and the marketing expenses. And with metal art, the AOV was significantly higher. And
what would you say the difference in the AOV was between, everybody knows mugs are cheap. You can't sell a mug for very much at all. So let's, exclude that product, something with a higher perceived value like jewelry.
Yeah, the AOV on that was probably, it would bounce around, but let's say between $35, $50.
$35, $50 with a product cost of approximately what?
Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I
already know this information, so it was about $15 to $18 when you include shipping.
Yeah.
So you're looking at potentially $30-ish worth of profit.
Mm-hmm. And then that went right into marketing. Well, especially when you're testing. Testing is going to cost more because you have to dial in the target market.
How much money would you say that you spent trying to dial in your marketing? Before your ads actually started to take off and be profitable, how much money did you spend before your ads started becoming break even?
Thousands.
Tens of thousands? 20s of thousands?
Before I was...
And this is really just to help everybody
even.
else manage the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that think, like, I've spent $3,000 and I'm just now breaking even. Like, that would be phenomenal. If you could spend $3,000 and be consistently breaking even at $3,000, I think that's amazing.
I
think really if you're hitting, and when I say breaking even, like, let's say that over the course of spending $10,000, you're at $9,000 worth of profitable revenue. Like that's what I'm not saying you should like be completely losing your ass until you've spent $15,000 and so your bank account is just negative $15,000. I'm saying that like over the course of 2 or 3 months you might have spent $20,000 for your bank account to now be $2,000 less than that.
Yeah, it was probably around, I would give or take 3,000. Before I started, and that's just on ads. That's not including, the additional expenses that I had for
software costs and
and products for the orders that were being fulfilled. So there's some additional costs that, the course that I had taken. But just ads alone was, a couple $1,000s.
Okay. And so you happened across My Easy Monogram. You started seeing some success with the metal art. What made you determine that you needed to do a fundamental shift away from what you had been doing to this new product, to this new service?
So in just to clarify too, I think the reason I spent more up front in ads was a combination of variables. I think one, I was doing it out of desperation. It was a very difficult time in my life, and it was a point where like I needed it to work, and I think I was trying to force it, and I wasn't doing what I should have been doing. I wasn't doing my research properly. I was doing a lot of things based on my own emotions, things that I thought were going to work really well, and they just weren't. And so I had to kind of hit the reset button after a while of doing that, where I realized like I can't keep doing this. I'm going to get to a point very, very soon where I just can't do this anymore. And so I had to really stop everything I was doing, go back to the drawing board, and just restart and really, really follow the process, do my research, and create really good ads. But so I had a few different products that were selling, as I said before. But metal art, I started seeing a higher intent to purchase. The increase in the AOV, I was profitable on the ads that I was running. Still dialing in my target market, but I started to see that profitability with metal art.
What was your AOV with the metal art?
So when I first started selling metal art, I would say my AOV was probably in over 100, but like low 100 range. I started
so your AOV with that product was essentially triple, a little bit over double, maybe triple of what it was with some of the other products you had success with.
Yeah, but then I started implementing upsells and post-purchase and auto add to cart, things like that, that have significantly increased my AOV.
What's been the do you feel like the AOV is directly correlated to your ability to scale the business?
Oh, absolutely.
What's the main contributing factor there?
That I'm profitable.
Yeah. Well, because and the way I like to break this down is, would you rather sell 100 things for $100, or would you rather sell 1,000 things for $10? And if you sell 1,000 things for $10, or 100 things for $100, if I'm not doing the math wrong there, it's the same revenue, but you now have to deal with 10 times as much auxiliary bullshit. You have to do 10 times the amount of customer support, the amount of damages. You're having to deal with 10 times more problems. And also on the products where your AOV is $50, let's just say that your profitability on that one person's thing, we'll call it $7.50. After you take out your credit card payment processing fees, your marketing, your true net profit is maybe we'll call it $7.50. Versus something that you're getting 3 or 4 times the average order value on. Now you're looking at $30, $40, $50 per order of profitability. And it's really just what makes you want to get up in the morning. Like, do you want to get up in the morning for $7.50, or do you want to get up in the morning for $30, $40? And so that's always been the daunting thing for me, because back in 2017, we went from with me selling the metal art, we initially started in the monogram space. The owner of the company decided that we needed to do trinkets, little $7, that way we can build our email list. But all we were doing is get a bunch of unqualified people that weren't going to come and buy the $80 thing later. And so we were literally like gerbils on a hamster wheel for morsels of cheese, and big operation, I think at the peak we had about 85 employees. That comes with HR, healthcare service, like just everything. The total cost for everything to do a bunch of things for pennies per piece, just ultimately it ran that business into the ground and actually drove that business out of business. I believe it was earlier this year. So I see it on my end. Like it's just really hard to scale a business when you've got such a small. It's not about the margin percent wise. It's about how big is that. Is that piece on a per person unit worth it to you? Mm-hmm. So when you made the transition to metal art, you said your average order value was about $100 and maybe $110.
I would estimate it to be around there, yeah, give or take.
What were you able to do to boost that, and what would you say that your average order value is now?
So the biggest factor, I think there's a combination of factors here, honestly. I think it's my targeting. I think I'm pulling in the right demographic mm-hmm. that is paying more per order. But
so if your sales don't do well, you don't think you need to drop your price?
No, I increased my price. That was another thing that contributed to my AOV, actually.
Okay. So what's your average order value now, and what do you think is contributing to that?
So there were multiple different factors that has contributed to my increased AOV. One, I think it's my targeting. I'm pulling in the right traffic that's paying more per order. They're also adding the upsells, which the upsells was a huge factor, probably the most important factor to increasing my AOV.
And what are those upsells, and how are you implementing those?
So I have magnetic hanging hardware it's a product upsell. So when someone adds it to cart, it pops up and says, you want to add magnetic hanging hardware. Then I also have auto add to carts, which is the package protection.
And what's the auto add to cart?
Auto add to cart is there's different apps you can use, but you use an app that automatically puts a product in the customer's cart. And so I have
when they order a specific product, right?
Yeah. So depending on the order value, I have one that's for a certain amount, and then another one that's over 100. So it's under 100 or over 100. So whatever the value of the cart is, it will automatically add the package protection appropriately for that order. And then I also have post purchase set up. I have tested with different products for post-purchase. But right now I'm getting a lot of people who are adding the expedited processing and shipping as a post-purchase.
Okay.
So all of those. And now my AOV, it bounces around, but it's typically on average around 140, 150. Some days it's significantly higher. But on average it's around there.
Okay. Can you recall the largest order that you've gotten price-wise?
I think the largest order I had was like $600 something. They ordered multiple products.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I think it was actually close to $7. I want to say it was like $698, but I could be wrong.
So what platforms are you using primarily to generate this traffic? I know TikTok's been hot, but there's also those legacy Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google. What's been working for you, and why do you think that is?
So I primarily use TikTok. I also run ads through Facebook, Instagram, Google. I've tested a little bit with Pinterest, Etsy. There's a few others that I've tested with, but just consistently TikTok has performed really well for me. Okay. So I've consistently focused on TikTok. TikTok is, in my opinion, and this is from somebody who was brand new to the e-commerce world, had literally no experience on running ads or any of that. And also, mind you, I came in right after the iOS update that impacted a lot of businesses with Facebook.
Which just for the the listener who might not be aware of that, the iOS 14 update is where essentially in a battle between Apple and Facebook, Apple determined that Facebook was no longer going to be able to track your device as specifically. And so unless you click a button that says yes, allow tracking. And so it really cut back on the amount of data points that Facebook had to target people for better ad performance.
Yeah, and also around that time, they changed the targeting categories that were available. So you couldn't really dial in as easy on the targeting.
Right.
You kind of have to, there's a lot that goes into it with testing different targeting and doing your research to find the correct targeting, but you also have to, let it go through that learning phase as well. But yeah, so it's a lot harder to market on Facebook now from my understanding of what it used to be. But with TikTok is just really good at figuring out the target market for you. You do have to guide it. In the very beginning, it's a lot of testing, analyzing data, making adjustments, and then once you have several, typically around 50 orders, give or take, TikTok gets a lot better at dialing in that marketing for you.
Okay. Do you feel like it's relative to the amount of orders that you get or the amount of money that you give to TikTok?
Well, it's, everything is my own opinion just because I'm not, I don't work for TikTok and I don't know exactly what they're doing on the back end. But I think it's a combination of things. I think that in the beginning,
because you need to pay to play. Like that's been rule of thumb since I've been in e-commerce. Like when we did $20 million in revenue, we paid Facebook, I want to say probably close to $10 million. Like you've got to pay to play.
Yeah, but with TikTok, when you first create an account, you'll see that your CPM is typically significantly lower because it essentially it's sending it out to a lot more people for a lot less of a price and the reason for that is because TikTok is trying to figure out that targeting for you. So it's not uncommon when you first launch an account to see some really good results, maybe even a couple sales right away, because it's cheaper in the beginning, but then.
Well, I think that's also just how the TikTok algorithm works. Like if you go and you post a couple videos consistently on your TikTok account, you're going to see really good engagement, and that's TikTok's way of you getting that dopamine hit of, oh wow, like I'm trending, like I'm this is something that I could be doing more of. And so they give you a little bit of cheese at the beginning of the maze to make you complete the maze. And so do you feel like that's the same thing on the marketing side at all, that they're going to show you a little bit of success? Maybe it results in a sale, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's just really good metrics, but they show you that little bit so now you're hooked.
I think it could be that, but I think it's also for TikTok to be able to figure out, to get through that learning phase quicker and figure out your target market. But it's very short-lived. You have to then be really analyzing your data and relaunching and making the adjustments on your targeting to help guide it and figure that out. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, the more I spent on TikTok, the better my account performed. But again, that could also be a combination of just now it has more data attributing to my pixel from my website, showing TikTok the customers that are interested in sending more qualified traffic.
Well, and that makes sense too, because from TikTok's perspective, they don't know that you're selling metal art. They don't know that metal art comes in 5 different colors and 5 different sizes, and that these are the price points and all that kind of stuff. They don't know anything about what the product is that you're selling. Literally in their system, your store is ones and zeros, and all of your products are ones and zeros. So it's trying to broadcast to find out what ones and zeros humans like your ones and zeros products. The pictures could be black on the user side and on the product side. TikTok literally does not know when you sign up for TikTok, if you're selling metal art, they're not instantly going to say like, oh, let's go find people who like metal art. TikTok doesn't even know what a metal art is when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to find, they're broadcasting you to find the pockets of similar data attributed people
Yep.
that seem to show interest and ultimately purchase your black box item, whatever that might be.
Yeah. And also with the ads that you're launching, like I said before, in the beginning, when I first started launching ads, I was doing wild things. I was doing just, whatever I thought was going to be great. And it wasn't what I should have been doing. But that being said, I would hope, because I'm like, it's so good. If I just relaunch it again, we're going to get some more sales. If I launch it differently, it's going to work. And
What made you determine it was going to be good?
Well, nothing. That's why it was bad. It was not working for me and I was burning money. So my problem was, and I had to accept that this was my problem. They say the first step is acknowledgement, right? I had to accept that what I was doing wasn't working, and I had to actually listen to what the data was telling me, because the data was telling me it wasn't a good ad. The data was telling me nobody likes what you're doing, but I liked it so much, I would just keep on, maybe test a different variable and relaunch and think that, it's going to work. But I had to listen to the data.
What data?
And be very strict.
What data are you referring to?
So you mean in TikTok?
Mm-hmm.
So, in the beginning, when you're first launching test ads, you're looking, I call it vanity metrics, CPC, CPM, CTR. Those are the main metrics you're looking at.
Can you define those for me?
Yeah, so cost per click.
Okay. CPC, cost
is how
per
many
click.
people are actually clicking. CTR is the click-through rate, or excuse me, the click-through rate is how many people are actually clicking. The CPC is the cost of those people that are actually clicking your ad. But the CPM is when you're initially testing, these metrics are very important because it tells you if it's a good ad. CPM is the amount of people that
It's how much it's cost per thousand. It's how much they're charging you to show it to 1,000
but it's the
people.
amount of impressions. Yeah. So the amount of impressions, so 1,000, the cost per 1,000 impressions that you're getting on that ad. But it's very important to really focus, especially on the CPM when you're testing, because that is telling you that the click-through rate and the cost per click is telling you if people are interested, whether it's your product or your ad, and you got to figure that out. But it's literally telling you if it's a winning ad or not.
So if I'm hearing you right, when you first launch a new ad creative, you're really focusing on the CPM. The CTR and the CPC is important, but your first vanity metric is going to be the CPM. Is that right?
Yeah. I do weigh in all of them, but yes.
I think I know why that's an important first step. It's because the ultimate goal for TikTok is people's attention. Mm-hmm. And so if your ad creative is not good enough to be
it's TikTok, not going to put it in front of enough people.
Yeah, TikTok wants to show people things that are entertaining to those people so that those people stick around. And so if you're having to spend a lot of money for people to be watching your videos, that's because your video is not good enough for TikTok to be essentially promoting it cheaply.
Yeah, and TikTok is very content driven. That's why I'm always researching, analyzing my data, and creating new ads, because TikTok wants you to constantly feed it new content. Mm-hmm. So even if I have a working ad, I'm tweaking it, changing one variable at a time, and relaunching, because if you're not constantly feeding TikTok, you could still get sales on that same winning ad for a very long time. But if you're not consistently creating new ads and feeding TikTok that content, mm-hmm. your account won't perform. And the vanity metrics, as I call it, CTR, CPC, and CPM, those are super important during the testing phase. But once you're scaling, they kind of go out the window to a degree. Especially, I will still focus on them when I'm first launching an ad, but after it's spent a little bit, I'm not focusing on that, especially if I'm getting sales, then I'm focusing on my ROAS, because that's the whole point of it, right? Is to be profitable, to be getting sales. If you're getting sales and you're positive ROAS, then it's working, and those metrics kind of become irrelevant.
Right. So you're first launching an ad, and you want to make sure that ad is entertaining and engaging, mm-hmm. which keeps your CPM low. Mm-hmm. And then you start to look at your CTR and your CPC, and you're essentially at that point, if I'm not mistaken, your CTR and your CPC are relative to one, the relevancy of your media, because if the media that you're creating is not relevant to a certain demographic, relevant to a certain target audience, then we'll just say it has a very broad relevancy. So you're being broadcasted to everybody because your TikTok, you can't target that well. So your content is supposed to do the targeting for you, right?
Yeah, but when you're testing, you really want to be analyzing the data and making adjustments to your targeting and relaunching.
Right, but the point that I'm getting at is, CPM means, a low CPM means that you do have good entertaining content, but a high CTR or a high CPC is probably indicating that your content's not speaking niche down enough to the person.
High CTR is great because you're getting a lot of people clicking on it, but the high CPC,
you want a high click-through rate, but you want the cost of that to be low.
Right.
And the only way to do that is for your content to be speaking directly to the person instead of speaking broadly to everybody. You want to try to have the content that speaks directly to that person.
Yep.
And you want your call to action to be very obvious so that people know to click.
Yeah, and I mean, arguably the most important...
how do you know that I am selling things? How do you know to click on my product?
Yeah, absolutely, but arguably the most important factor is probably your hook, because if you don't have a good hook, people are going to keep scrolling. They're not going to stop at all.
You need a scroll stopper.
You need a good hook. You need it to be the right length because you don't want to bore people. Mm-hmm. And all this comes with research and, analyzing what's working for other ads, but the length of the video is important. And then, of course, the call to action, because that, like you said, that's what's going to get somebody to click on it and actually go to your site.
Right. So when you say that, doing your research, and how when you started launching your ads, you were doing what you thought worked well. Mm-hmm. Dialing back and doing your research, what did that picture look like?
It looked like me creating what I thought were boring ads.
Okay.
Just to be honest with you.
Because you're going into TikTok and you're looking for high performing ads.
Yeah.
And then you're recreating that.
Yeah.
And you're not doing a spin-off of it. You are verbatim recreating that one thing.
I'm following it very closely rather than using all my own ideas for whether it be images or wording or transitions, animations, like all these things that I thought were really cool and really fun, and they were my own ideas and I thought it was interesting. People apparently weren't interested in. So when I actually started doing my research and seeing what people were interested in and following what was working for mind you, at the time when I first started doing ads on TikTok, I couldn't find metal art on TikTok. Okay. Right. So I didn't have anything that I could verbatim copy because it didn't exist. Right. So, I mean, and if it did, I couldn't find it. And I spent a lot of time, and you can get lost in research because it can be a very time consuming process to go through and find things that are working. But all that to say, I couldn't find what I was trying to sell on TikTok on there. So I was just finding something similar. I was finding products that were in the same realm, so that might appeal to the same target demographic, in the similar price point, especially being custom, gifts, whatever, type of product it was. And then I was creating ads similar to those working products in that same niche.
Right. So you identify your avatar, the person that you're trying to sell to, and then you find other products that avatar is likely to purchase. You find the high-performing ad content for those products, and you try to replicate that.
And that is the key factor there, what you said, high-performing. In the beginning, that was another mistake that I was making. I was finding ads. I'd find it, it looked good, so I'd test it. I was refusing. It looked good
per your opinion
my opinion, my own personal emotions. Right. And so I had to recognize again with that in my research that I wasn't properly researching. I was just finding something. Maybe it had a couple hundred views on it and it looks good to me. And so I was replicating my ads to be similar, but I realized that that was not a working ad. I needed to find something that had thousands of likes, that had shares and comments, and there was actually a working ad. And once I started following only working ads, that made a huge difference.
All right, so you launched your course. You've got a course and a VIP community of live calls that are happening every week where you're going in, helping people analyze their data, helping them identify based on what's working for you in the market in real time. As we get into this Q4, what made you want to launch your course? What made you want to launch your VIP group?
So I just wanted to be able to help other people and prevent them from having to go through the frustration that I went through. Because I had several people that were reaching out to me that knew that I was selling metal art. They knew that I was having success with it. And actually, I had people reaching out to me for over a year before I started working on that. But
back when you first came on the scene with MEM last Q4, right?
When I started having a lot of success with metal art, I had people reaching out to me. And then fast forward to this year, the same people were still reaching out to me and trying to prepare for this Q4. And so it just made sense.
Why would you start your own coaching group when you learned from another coach? Like, why not just push people to that original coach? Are you not regurgitating the same stuff that you were taught?
I have referred people to the course that I took. I think it was a great program. I learned a lot from it, but they weren't focusing on specifically what I'm doing. So I learned a lot foundationally from the program. And then I applied that to what I'm doing specifically.
Are the strategies different because the AOV is different?
So the testing strategy is the same.
Okay.
In general, the testing strategy, it applies. It was, the scaling for me, where I had to test a lot of things on my own to figure out what was working. I did a lot of research on my own. I was a big follower of YouTube University, and Google became my best friend.
So what I've seen out of you is you really have a very genuine desire to help other people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I am aware that it is at my own detriment at times, but I do want to help other people and prevent them from having, like I said before, the frustration and overspending the way that I did. I mean, like I said before, I was to the point where I wasn't going to be able to do it. But I had my ad account shut down on me so many times when I first started doing this, and the only way I was able to get it running again was with cash flow.
Right.
It was a struggle for me in the beginning. I clawed at this thing to make it work. And if I can help anyone else make it easier for them to where they're not having to go through the struggles that I went through, that's ultimately my goal.
So without getting too deep into this, you started your e-commerce journey in the same position that a lot of people reach out to you and say that they're in. It's like, I am at the end of a road. I need this to work. I have no other options. I cannot. You at the time had to, for personal reasons, could not work where you used to work. You could not pursue the career that you had spent years curating. Forces outside of your control meant that you had to completely shift everything about your life.
Yep.
You've got a daughter, you've got a home, you've got a car, everything still needs to get paid for, everything still needs to get taken care of.
Yep.
And so, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of your empathy is to help people that are in that same situation, because you know how dire of a situation it was for you at that time. There was no alternative option but to make it work.
Sorry, it still makes me emotional thinking about it. Yeah, it's a hard time.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I didn't think I would.
It's all right. So, there's a lot of empathy for you to help people,
Yeah.
because it's so common that people turn to e-commerce as either a last-ditch effort or a way of resetting their life's path. They've worked a job, they worked at a vet for 15 years. They don't know what else to do. They were a bartender. They were in some other walk of life, and the most efficient or effective way to get out of that life, instead of transitioning to a different career field, was to go into e-commerce, because it was something that gave them flexibility, it gave them life options, and the promise of a very promise of a great opportunity to live a great life.
Yeah. I have people who owned their own business for several years, and their business went under for, unforeseen circumstances out of their control. Single moms that are just, stay at home and want to be able to contribute, or maybe it's not enough with what their husband's bringing in. I mean, everyone's going through their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, ultimately, like you said, that is my goal, to be able to help other people, and hopefully they, I can make it
to
easier
be that
for
hand
them.
that you wish that you had
Yes.
at that point in your life.
Yep. We just had a big update. TikTok releases lots of little updates.
This one was perfectly timed. Best time of the year to be launching.
Just like everyone did updates this month, I swear, from data attribution to Google. I mean, everybody's doing updates, of course, right when we get into Q4.
Right in the heart of Q4.
Yeah. But yeah, so this was a big update that they released. And so, immediately I'm researching the articles with TikTok to figure out, the functionality and testing, lots of different strategies with the new functionality that they released. And then, of course, reporting back to everyone to let them know what is and isn't working for me.
Well, and I think it's also important to note that, the ability for you to see how these changes affect at a macro level how you run your ads, because you've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars through TikTok, and you're running hundreds of ads, 50 plus campaigns, hundreds of ads, and so many orders, that you're able to see from a very high level how things are conceptually different now than they were a week ago, versus somebody who maybe they've only gotten 10, 15 orders. Maybe they've only gotten 100 orders over the course of a couple months. They've only spent a couple $1,000s. And for you to be able to see how the tides are changing is very hard to do when you've got so little data to look at, and so little data on your TikTok account trained to your pixel.
Well, in the more ads you're running, to your point, you have a lot more data to analyze. But it also is helping TikTok to figure out that targeting as well.
Right.
So, the saying, it takes money to make money, I think there's different sides to that as to why that is. But I do find it to be accurate. The more ads that I've ran, the better my account has performed.
What's the biggest mistake that you see of the people that have joined your course? What's the most common error that you're seeing people make across the board?
all the same mistakes I was making in the beginning.
Yeah. Which ironically is the reason that you're making this course, so that people don't do that. But
Yeah.
why is it still happening?
It's like shiny object syndrome. I think it's like the same thing that I had, because to be fair, I knew that I shouldn't be doing what I was doing too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's I think it's a personal problem. Like it's you have to break down who you are as a person. Again, this is one of the things I said on the live call. I pop in every now and then, but it's, if you go onto TikTok, or if you were to ask any of the people in your course, who here is an e-commerce expert, mastermind guru, nobody has the right there to raise their hand, because they're not. So it's very egocentric for them to create ads that they think are going to work well.
Yeah, but I don't think it's being egocentric. I think it's just hard for people to take their emotion out of it, because when you're creating something, it's almost
You've
like
got pride
you take
in
pride.
it.
Exactly. You take pride in what you're doing, and
this
you
is a
want
business.
it to
take your emotion out of it. Like,
you want it to look good because you consider it a reflection of you.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to separate that emotion and be able to create something that you absolutely hate or don't like.
I mean, ultimately, and I think this goes for most of the people that are in e-commerce and in POD. I don't care what the product is. I want to make money. Like, I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it smells like. I don't care what it tastes like. If it sells, I'm good. And so I think that's probably the biggest issue that people have when they start trying to launch ads, or anybody going into business, period. You're going into business either because you just love the craft, but that's nobody in the POD space, because it's not their craft. So you're there to make money. So take your emotion out of it, make logical business decisions, and build off of that foundation.
Yeah, I had someone the other day, for several weeks, I was telling them to change their hook and giving them advice on specifically what to use that I know works. And they were just completely refusing to do it, just completely against it, because they don't like it. They think it's, it was an emotional hook. It was like I cried, well, like the cried. I wasn't giving them one specific thing. I was giving them examples of what to use. Like, I cried when I opened this, just different like lovey-dovey type things. But the specifically the word cry was the one that this person just was extremely against. And I kept telling him, you need to do this. Emotion sells. If they cry, they buy. And I kept saying, you need to do this, but they were adamantly against it, because they, in their words, wanted to throw up when they would see that, because they've seen it.
Because it seems like just such a like if you were to read it, your opinion is like, oh, this is some cheesy crap.
Yeah.
Like, get this cheesy crap out of here. I'm more artistic. I can come up with something that is more engaging than I cried when I opened this. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just told him, I said, are you going to be throwing up when you're collecting their money? And they're like, no. And, they're laughing. And then the next day they tested it and then sent me a message saying that they're getting amazing results just by making that one change.
Right.
So it just goes to show you that your emotions can completely be a roadblock in your success.
Yeah. And so the funny thing is, had they not gone into that with the emotion in the first place, we'll just call it 2 months ago. If 2 months ago they didn't go into it with the emotion and they made that change, now that one change might have not resulted in any sales, but you get better metrics because of that. And so now, okay, wow, my hook is good. Now I can start refining the next 3 seconds of my video. And now so you're constantly evolving the entirety of, we'll call it a 30-second video. But until you get that hook right, you can't go anywhere. You can't start optimizing the 10 to 15 second range of that video until people are actually watching to that point in the video. And so it's interesting to me that that person might be refining the closing call to action statement now and pulling in and figuring out how to pull in a crap ton of money now in primetime Q4. But because they waited so long to make that change on the hook, because that was such an emotional decision for 1 or 2 months, they're now not going to have much time to figure out the optimization for maximum profitability throughout the rest of that content.
And they've spent a lot of money, time, frustration.
Yeah. Anytime that you're spending too much money, you probably need to scrap it and go back to basics. Like there's borderline a blueprint to doing this thing right. And that's how you're able to start a new ad, and sometimes you kill it in a day and you'll never look at that ad again because you just know that didn't work. So how many new ad creatives are you testing maybe weekly?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me of all time.
No, I know that number's too big.
Yeah.
So we'll dial that down to weekly.
No, it's typically at least one a day. It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm scaling, it's one a day. If I, say seasonality, we're changing, to a different season, a different trend, it's going to be multiple in a day. But when I'm scaling,
because when you're scaling, you're spending so much time scaling that you don't really have time to be testing other things.
Yeah,
you're busy raking in money.
Well, and also when I'm scaling, I'm now focusing on that,
optimizing that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Like I was saying earlier, optimizing maybe the call to action of it, or So, what's the biggest piece of advice that you would give to somebody who has never started TikTok advertising ever? And the reason I specify on TikTok is just because you said TikTok's what's working for you. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. Facebook has gotten very hard. If you're not a business that's doing $10+ million a year, it's hard to afford to do what you need to do to make Facebook work right now. So what's a piece of advice that you'd give to somebody straight out the gate, just day one, you're starting today? What's your advice?
I think it would be a two-part answer. One, like we've talked about before, take your emotions out of it. Completely remove any feelings you have and be 100% data-driven, and all of your decisions should be strategic and based on research and data. And the second part of that, which is in relation to what I just said actually, is to always stay in the research, data analyzing, testing phase.
Okay.
Always stay in that phase.
So, and I think I know where you're going with this, but just to elaborate on that, even if you have something that you feel is scalable, you will work on scaling that thing. But while you're scaling that thing, you're still putting other lures in the water. You're still casting more rods out into the water to find the next thing. Because like you said, the way that TikTok works, you need new content consistently. And so it won't let you ride that one gravy train all the way home, right?
You mean on the one specific creative?
Yeah, you said that you always need to stay in that testing phase. And I believe the core of what you're saying there is because even if you have one thing pop off, that one thing is not going to retire you.
Well, and you have, seasonality, you have trends, you have different, time of the year. So you're constantly going to be needing to make adjustments based on the time of year. And
so it's really, you're really trying to set the expectation and let everybody know the mindset that you need to be if you want to do well in POD, drop shipping, e-commerce. You need to know that you're going to be constantly researching and testing for as long as you want to do this.
Yeah.
Because that's one variable that's not going to change.
Yeah, but there's two reasons
don't enjoy
for
doing
that,
it,
though.
This might not be your spot.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You if you don't like that, you're going to hate it.
Yeah.
But there's two reasons for why we do it. One, it's to optimize what's currently working. And two, it's to find something new, whether it be preparing for the next season or you're now in that season and you're doing more research on the next thing that you're doing, what if it's a trend or if it's a holiday or
different music working now, different
whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you're always going to want to optimize what's currently working. We always want to keep our CPC as low as possible and our CTR as high as possible. Again, they're relevant when you're scaling, but in general, when you first launch an ad, it's always relevant in the testing phase, and it is relevant when you're first launching an ad. But anyway, so we always want to have the most profit, right? We want to get the most amount of sales for the least amount of money. So we're always trying to optimize what is working, and also testing for, what our next marketing or goal or product, whatever it is.
Absolutely. Well, Michelle, I appreciate you coming in, chatting with me about all this today. Everybody, I hope that we get to do these podcasts more often. We're actually looking at getting a setup ourselves closer to home where we can do this on a more regular basis. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. God, see, I can't talk about it.